In today's video we're going to be taking a look at a dash cam. It's the Viofo A119, but before I go into that, let me talk about something else first briefly. I've been reviewing dash cams since 2010. Back then it was a new thing to market. I used to have to explain what the point of a dash cam was and how they operated, and I used to get lots of questions about the common features. Now I think they're pretty well established. So I've moved all that stuff out of the video and onto my website at techmoan.com. If you go to the top of there, click on Guide to Dashcams, you'll find a paragraph about all the different common dashcam features you'll find in every dashcam. I've got some hints and tips on there as well, and there's a video explaining why you might want one in the first place. So we don't need to put that in every video now, it's over there. I also maintain a list of my favourites of the dashcams that I've tested. Now there's no one single dashcam that will suit everyone. It very much depends on your own particular needs and circumstances, but one of the dashcams that you'll see on that list is the A118. It's on there because it was a nice simple dash camera that can hide away at the top of a windscreen, and it's quite popular with a lot of people. Well, the camera I'm showing you today is the successor to that, the 119. One of the tips on my website was the fact that if you live in a hot climate, it's recommended you do not buy a dash camera that contains a battery, because batteries swell up when they get hot and will malfunction. Much better to get a camera like this one that contains a capacitor. Now the camera's available in two different options, with or without a GPS enabled mount. I've got the GPS version here, so let me show you what I've got. We've got an instruction leaflet, camera, long USB lead, two mounts, spare adhesive, cable mounts, USB lead, and a car 12 volt to 5 volt dual adapter. So looking at the mounts I've got here, those attached to the camera on the top here, you can see that a wedge-shaped hole on there, and what we have to do is just stick one of these to the windscreen and then slide the camera onto it. This is the simple mount without any kind of electronics in it, in which case you just plug your USB lead into the camera. This one has electronics in it. In this case it's got the GPS receiver in here as well, so the power lead goes into that on this mount. That stays stuck to your windscreen. It's a nice simple option for cable tidying, because your cable just stays out of the way on that, and then the camera just slides onto it. I say if you didn't have the GPS mount attached, you use the simple one, then you've got a USB socket on the side of the camera there that you could use instead. But if you use that, of course, the power's not going through the GPS adapter, and therefore you wouldn't pick any GPS up. As you can see here, it's a wedge-shaped camera. The idea is it goes on your windscreen like that, and then the front view is like this. It's quite neat. You can have it hidden away quite well towards the top of your windscreen. This one's got an up and down movement here, which should be able to get the horizon level, and then also you can now move the lens left and right in this one, which you couldn't in the previous, so you can point it dead center down the middle of your bonnet on your car, or hood if you want to call it that. So there's the camera from the outside. I couldn't get a very good picture. There's the inside. I've stuck it about as high as I could there. Now you might think, well, that's quite a distance from the top of the windscreen, why don't you put it a bit further up? And the reason is because once you've got it on your windscreen, you have to be able to slide it off, of course, and the cable's got to go in the back here as well. So the cable's got to pop out of there. You could maybe use a right angle cable replacement, but also you've got to be able to slide the camera up and away from the mount. So you do need to put it a little bit further down. It also needs to be able to see past any kind of tints or dots at the top of your windscreen as well, and not get your rear view mirror mounting in the way. So it fits all right in that part of my car. Now on this side of the camera, you notice we've got an AV out and that USB port that we mentioned before, probably some vents on there. This side's got vents and perhaps a speaker, microphone, micro SD card slot, and a reset hole on there. And then on the other side we've got the 2-inch screen, and then we've got 5 buttons along the bottom of there. I suppose you could say that it's a basic dash camera, but that might be doing it a bit of a disservice. It's a simple, easy to use dash camera. It doesn't have things like Wi-Fi, but it's got all the features you need. Now I'll show you a couple of things here. When it's recording, if you press the menu button, that grabs a still image out of the video that's currently being recorded. I don't know why you do that, but it does. If you press the emergency button, it can operate in two different ways depending on the video mode you're in. In the highest quality video mode, the ones with high frame rates, it will just lock the current file being recorded. In some of the lower quality video modes, it will actually create an additional file based on a few seconds before and a few seconds after you press that emergency button. The microphone, you can turn it on and off there. And I'll just go into the various video resolution options. I'm not going to flick through all the menus here. I'll just put it up on screen so you can see what the resolution options are. The top one there, I've pretty much use that on most of the time, 1440p 2560 by 1440 at 30 frames a second. But I've used some of the other ones as well. Some video specs down there at the bottom. Notice it mentions 64GB card as a maximum. That's what it says on the box in the instructions and things. If you want to try something else, that's up to you, but that's what the manufacturers say is the maximum card size, which would hold about 7 hours of video at the highest quality. And as you'll have seen, we've gone straight into the video samples, and these should look pretty good. One reason in particular that it should look good is because I now upload my videos in 4K, and one of the main reasons for this was when you upload in 1080p, YouTube re-encode things and use a pretty low bitrate, and video where there's a lot of stuff going on with trees and shadows and things always ended up going blocky. Now when I've uploaded in 4K, they give a much higher bandwidth allowance for 4K video, and even 1080p video that's been uploaded in this won't get that same compression artifact issue that I was getting before, so we shouldn't get too much in the way of blocking and shadowy effects. But anyway, I'm going to have a couple of samples available because I've uploaded the whole video, of course, in 30 frames per second 4K to get the best quality, but there are going to be some clips I'll show you that were done in 60 frame per second modes. I can't jump frame per seconds during the course of the video, you've got to pick one overall, so the whole thing's in 30 frames per second, but I'll show you some 60 frame per second stuff that you can then download if you want to look at it in full detail, and it is properly 60 frames per second and not sort of duplicating frames. Notice there it went a little bit bright. I think that's something that happens every now and then, but it's not in a negative sense, it just seems to just sometimes go a bit too bright, but I wouldn't mind that because I'd rather it went bright than dark. Sometimes things went too dark. For example, this is a situation where things would have gone much too dark in the past on a lot of cameras. We're driving towards the sun, but we're going in and out of the shadow behind these large HGVs. Now that's the kind of thing that would make a lot of cameras just go very dark, this part here going towards the sun, but this camera, no problem at all. So no issues with the video quality. Now you've got the option of whether you want to show GPS information on screen or not. I have it switched on, but you'll notice at the bottom left it's not showing at the moment. That's because it hasn't got a lock. You'll see it popping on and off the screen, and that's as it's trying to get a lock, and then eventually it does get one and the information remains on screen. Now when it's on there, you'll also notice we've got the speed showing in kilometers per hour. I have got the option in a later firmware to show it in miles per hour, but I haven't installed that firmware because it wasn't something that was a big deal to me. The firmware is also supposed to enable better nighttime exposure control. I have had no issue with the exposure at nighttime. It seems to perform very well, so I haven't updated the firmware. I'm a firm believer in don't update something unless it's got a feature on it that you absolutely need, or there's something wrong with your particular camera, because you can end up getting yourself into all sorts of issues. Now, as the overall performance of dash cameras are improving, people are starting to notice more what they can't do. For example, they can't capture a good quality image of the registration number of a car coming in the opposite direction at night with its lights on. Well, it's not unexpected to me, but people seem to think once they've bought one of these things, they'll be the best camera in the world. I think you'd have trouble capturing that image with any camera you bought. You've got to really pick your battles. For example, this scene here, this could be quite challenging, but look, we can see that registration number. So yes, they're capable of getting detail at night at a distance, but just under the right circumstances, not with a load of glare and flashback off a reg number. Now, I've done very little shooting in the 1080p 60 mode. I've just done a couple of short journeys for the purpose of making this video. Of course, you won't be able to see them in 60 frames per second on YouTube because I've uploaded this as a 4K 30 frames per second video. So if you want to see anything like this in any kind of original quality, well, just download a video sample. But one thing I did do, I left the 1080p 60 mode on to do some nighttime footage as well, fully expecting it to be a complete disaster, but it wasn't. Let's have a look. Now, I was interested to notice that this camera has a 1080p 60 frame per second mode. Now, normally I'd recommend not using 60 frames per second on cameras that were recording in low light, because the more frames you record per second, the less light there is to go into those frames, and therefore the grainier and the darker the image. But as you can see, there's absolutely no problem at all with the 1080p 60 nighttime footage. In fact, it outperforms many 1080p 30 cameras I've tried in the last couple of years. Can't complain about this at all. I'm always the kind of person that would go for the higher quality resolution over the higher frame rate, but I know there's people that would go the other way. They'd rather have the 60 frame per second mode, and if you're one of those, then you could rest assured that if you put your camera into 1080p 60 mode, you could record day and night irrespective of the lighting conditions, and you get good quality video. And there's one more video mode I want to show you, which I've only recorded at night. It's at 120 frames per second. It's 720p, so we are losing quite a bit of resolution now. It's quite a lot softer, but still we've got no problem at all keeping the light in the image. I think this is remarkable for 120 frames per second video, and we're also not losing any field of view, which is something that would normally happen when you employ a mode like this. Now, one of the things with this camera, I should mention that when you record clips on it, and if you were to join them together, you don't lose any frames between clips. You do get a little bit of a pop on the audio, but you're not overlapping any video, you're not losing any video frames. They match up frame for frame. So overall, video quality, the way it performs, absolutely no problems at all with this. The sharpness of the highest 1440p mode, you can see here, it really gets some detail into that image. And a nice sunny day like this, you get some brilliant quality footage. Now at this point in a previous dash camera video, I would have gone through all the menu options on the camera, one after the other, bored everyone to death, and I thought that's just taking too long nowadays. Everyone knows what's in these menus anyway. So I've put them up on screen here. It's all the usual stuff. This camera does not do anything extraordinary. It just does the normal dash camera stuff, which is why I can put it on screen here. At the top there, if you're wondering what any of those things are, WDR, wide dynamic range, just switch that one on. Lane detection warning, system and forward collision warning, that's that thing when it beeps if it thinks you're going to drive out your lane. Everyone always switches it off because it gives too many false positives, and all the rest of the stuff's pretty much what you'd expect. At the bottom, I've got to mention, it doesn't have a parking mode, this camera. It doesn't do anything special in parking. It does have a time-lapse video mode, which will record all the time you're driving around. So rather than recording normal video, you're recording time-lapse video, and those are your options for that. And then finally, we've got this format warning. Now, this is something I haven't seen in other dash cameras. The idea is, with all dash cameras, it's recommended you format the card at regular intervals using the menus in the dash cam. So say every 2 months or so, you just reformat the card. It's just good housekeeping practice. Well, with this camera, there's a menu here, and you can specify how many days you want it to give you before it reminds you that you need to format the card again. And it will beep at you when you first switch it on until you format it. Well, that's a bit annoying, I thought. So in the end, I switched that off. But still, remember, format the card in a camera every couple of months just to keep on top of things. Incidentally, that format warning also used to beep whenever you remove the memory card from the camera just to download files off it, which is one thing that I found annoying. That's been fixed in the more recent firmware version that I mentioned earlier on. You can see the update notes on screen there. I'd imagine that ships on more recent versions of the camera, but if you needed to update that, then you can do that from the manufacturer's website. Now, if you're the kind of person that presses an emergency button frequently on a dash cam, then this might not be the one for you, because it's quite hard to make out at a distance when it's up on your windscreen, the sun's coming through, all the buttons are the same height as each other, there's no pimple or anything on that button. It could perhaps be in a different place down at the side or something, because you're just going to press the wrong one if you reach up. Probably stop yourself recording rather than actually pressing the emergency button. Not such a big deal for me anyway, because where I've got it mounted in my car, there's no way in heck I could even press that button. It's behind the rear view mirror on the passenger side, so it's off limits to me anyway. But if you're the kind of person that likes to press those buttons, then you're going to have a bit of difficulty with this one. And the next thing I want to mention is that GPS mount. My original one wasn't functioning, and I couldn't figure out what the problem was until I realised that one of the pins wasn't properly formed on there. There was only half a pin, which meant it wasn't connecting with the contacts on the bottom of the camera. Rather than mess around sending things back, I just ordered another one. It didn't cost so much, and that of course shows that you can buy multiple ones of these to put in different vehicles if you wanted. But it's just something to think about, that maybe the build quality is not perfect on these, and also the idea of having metal contacts on a camera to which metal pins then attach, and those pins are spring loaded. I think you've got a point of failure here. Now don't misunderstand me here, mine is now working fine. I've had it in the car for 2 months, now it's got the right number of pins on it, it's functioning completely as it should. I'm thinking more if you're the kind of person that has to remove your dash camera from the car every time you park up. This particular setup isn't really suited for that. We're dealing with plastic rubbing on plastic with little metal pins in between on springs, and you've got issues of course with heat expansion and stuff. I can imagine over time you're going to get connectivity issues between these two things. So yeah, not for the kind of person that removes the camera all the time, just for someone that does it on occasion. As far as the overall build quality goes on the camera, I'd put that down as adequate. It doesn't blow me away with being super high quality construction, but also it doesn't feel flimsy in any way. It's just as good as it needs to be. One thing I will mention, that little adhesive pad on the mount is grey on the inside of your windscreen. They could perhaps have used black VHB tape on that instead to make it more discreet. Now, if you want to get hold of one of these, I'm going to have links in the video description for Amazon and eBay. There'll also be links up there for some downloadable sample clips if you want to try some of those out for yourself. But that's it for the moment. As always, thanks for watching.